All right. Hey, hello, Fireside, and welcome. I know you guys are either listening on a podcast or you are watching. And I just want to introduce to you my grandmother. This is Virginia Rose Wilbur. And she is, Graham, you are how old?
96.
96 years old. And if you've been following us with Fireside, we've been going through our values and who we are as Fireside, the kind of church we want to be. And you can go in our past messages and podcasts and hear about that. And as I was thinking about this online Sunday, because we're not in person this morning, I thought, what an opportunity we have to share my grandmother, who has impacted me as a leader and has helped me form some of the values that we have explained for Fireside. And I just wanted you to have an inside look on my Graham and some of the stories that have impacted me and shaped our thought of a woman who's been in... Graham, you were a pastor's wife for how long?
Oh, at least 50 years.
50 years she was married to a pastor, but you yourself were very involved in church and lived up in the Bar Harbor area. So you lived in Mount Desert Island, actually on Acadia National Park, the island, right?
Right.
And you also had a camp in Eastbrook, Maine,
That's right.
has a town of about 100 people on it. And I always tell people that everybody in that town is related to us. Is that true?
50% of them are.
50% are related to us, and I like those odds. But Greg, I just wanted to start off with, introducing yourself and Grandpa. And so you got married. What year did you guys get married?
What year?
Yeah.
In the 1940s.
And how did you and Grandpa meet?
We always knew each other, but we became friends when he was a prisoner of war, and I was writing him letters there.
So you were writing letters back and forth when he was in POW camp. And explain a little bit about that, Graham. So what did Grandpa do? What's that story?
And his plane was shot down, ran into another plane. They crashed over France. And in France, Germany was occupied by the Germans, and they captured him. And he was put on prison camp by the Baltic Sea.
And how long was he in prison camp?
14 months.
14 months.
Yes.
And you were writing letters.
Right.
So you could actually write to prisoners of war?
Yes, we could. It didn't always get there. It went to Poland, where a friend of his was also a prisoner in Poland, and he would resend it to Germany.
And then when he came back, you got married shortly after.
We started going together. It was about a year before we got married.
And for those who are young, going together means dating, right?
Dating.
And then you got married. And then you guys were both teachers.
Right.
And then he was also a pastor.
Right.
And I love the story, you would do, so you went to, we went to the same college, we went to Gordon College, but Gordon was in Boston, right?
Right, on the Evans Way.
Okay, so this is my mom's dog, Lily, is here with us. But I want to talk about some of our values. And so one of our values at Fireside is that we believe in the Word, the Bible, we value that over the world, what the world says. And do you know what this is, Graham?
No.
So this was Grandpa's, your husband's Bible
Yes.
in World War II. And so he had this with him when he was a POW, right?
Right.
And you had mentioned stories about how they would cite scripture, all the prisoners in the camp. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to share that story about when you guys went back to Germany in the 80s, right? And it was a celebration of this prison camp that Grandpa was at. And so it was Americans and Germans coming together to kind of reconcile, but they were still under communist rule. This was before the Berlin Wall came down. And you and Grandpa got to go inside the wall.
Right.
And tell me about that story on that Sunday morning where they asked Grandpa to preach.
They came to the door where we were staying, and they said, the people who came with you want to have a service on Sunday. We don't have church services, even though there was a beautiful big church where the bell rang all the time right there. So they said, if you preach, if you go there, we want to make sure that you don't talk about us.
Meaning the
So-
Germans.
Yeah, no, the Russians who had us there,
Gotcha.
invited us there. They said, we will be attending your service and watching you. And he said, good, you're very welcome. And they were a little put out with him because they didn't like his attitude on that, but they had about 6 of them watching when he preached the gospel. Now, he preached the gospel of salvation. It was written up in the newspaper back then from the people who had the tour, that he was the first man to preach the gospel after the war in Germany.
So my grandfather, your husband, was the first man to preach the gospel in Germany after World War II.
As far as they knew.
Another value that we have as Fireside is that we believe that the word love is not something that you say, but something that you do. My grandmother is a stickler on grammar. That, you know, my grandmother always corrects me with my bad English. And so we like to say that love is a verb, not a noun. Does that make sense, Graham? And a lot of that comes from you. So as you and Grandpa were ministering and working with kids, you would take kids into your house. My aunt, who I call my aunt now, Amanda, right? Amanda was someone you guys took in. Can you tell me a little bit about what your house was like growing up? It was filled with kids, right? And what was that like, and why did you do it?
After I was married,
Yes, yeah.
people just seemed to come. I had my daughter and then my son, and we had a place on Webb Pond in Eastbrook, and people came there. They came if they were having trouble. My husband was teaching the junior high, and Amanda was having a few problems. We invited her to come stay, and she did. She became my foster daughter. And other children without homes or needed a place to live, it just seemed kind of natural for them to gravitate to our place.
So you just would take in kids who had no homes.
More or less, yeah.
So what would a typical summer day look like at the camp for you guys?
At Webb Palm, where we built our camp, we would have, when it came lunchtime, probably 10, 12, 13 gravitated. They'd come on bicycles or all around the town. They'd come there and stay the day, go swimming and fishing and in the boat. if they had life preservers. That was a firm
If-
rule.
If they had life preservers.
That was a firm rule. We had a lot of life preservers, and you had to wear life preservers if you went in the water. But they just seemed to gravitate there, and we would have sandwiches or whatever when they were hungry. I'd go to the grocery store a couple times a week, and we had quite a whole, anywhere from a dozen to 20 around most of the summer.
So my mom and my uncle were, you had a son and a daughter, and in the summer you would have 12 to 20 kids there, and I know for a fact that these kids have been greatly impacted, not just in the temporary of the world, but for eternity. What I loved about watching Grandpa and you is that you guys valued people over programs.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit, because as you guys valued people over programs, you guys were doing Pioneers. Pioneers was a program for kids, younger kids, right? And you guys kind of broke away from the Pioneers because you didn't agree with some of the things that they were saying. Is that correct?
Because we wanted to join Awana, which was a bigger association, and we could have more people there.
So explain that a little bit.
Awana was a program for youth which had sports, and it had the town of Franklin, where my husband was preaching, let us use the town hall one night a week for basketball or playing games and so forth. We had a friend in the church who furnished the money for a bus to pick them up with. So we had most of Franklin, Hancock, Eastbrook, a lot of young people, and a lot of people in the church helped with this, and where the gospel was made interesting to them. And we had a lot of children, teenagers, who still remember Awana and mention it to me once in a while. It was a youth group with the gospel, and many of the people in the church taught different age groups. I had the high school group myself, and my husband was the leader. When he would walk into the church full of young people, you could hear a pin drop when he spoke. And if only one time that I remember, a fellow got a little noisy, he took him home, told him he couldn't come again. The fellow called every night for a week that he wanted to come back and he would behave. Finally, at the end of the week, we brought him back and he never had any more trouble. So Awana presented the gospel to these young people, and we were very involved in it.
So what I love about that is I think most people who were brought up in a church who are going to youth group, a lot of people have stories if they were kicked out, they would be thankful that they don't have to go to that program anywhere. But at Fireside, we want to create environments for students and kids where kids want to be at. And I believe that you can share the gospel, who Jesus is, in an environment that can be exciting, it can be fun, it can be engaging. And what I love about your story is that you kicked a kid out for speaking, all right? And he desperately wanted to come back, so he called and called and called. And that you guys split, so you did Awana because you wanted to reach more kids.
That's right.
And because the other program that you were supposed to be doing was very limiting, right? It was
right.
And what was limiting about it? Was it just that you were only supposed to reach the kids in your church, or what made you want to leave from that other program?
Because Awana had things that the children were happy with and the children liked. And so everybody wanted to go to it. It was just the town, all the teenagers and the younger than teenage loved Awana.
And I mean, I just want people to understand that this was a big deal, because so many times churches can get so attached to a program that, you know, it causes them to be limited. And what I love about you, Graham, and Grandpa was that your heart to reach as many people as possible, because the majority of those kids and students were part of that church, right? They were part of the community.
They were the community, and the community was not a large community. And as I said, one of the men in the church donated the money for a bus for us to go and pick up children who couldn't get there otherwise.
So you would drive around the town picking up kids?
Picking up children, yes.
That's illegal now today.
Oh, but it was legal then.
That is awesome. And Graham, another value that we have of Fireside is that we want to focus on the unseen and not just the seen. Have our focus on heaven and things that will impact eternity, not just impact the here and now. And when Grandpa passed, could you talk about that day where you saw that what you saw in the sky? I love this story. Could you share that with us?
Well, I knew that he was not going to live more than a few hours more. We had nurses, we had people at home. He loved Web Pond and he wanted to be there when he passed. So I had been up night and day, and I wanted to, my son Randy was there with his father, so I wanted to go outside by the lake just a little. And when mother was downstairs doing the cooking and everything. So I went outside and I looked up into the sky and it was full of angels. I thought, as my imagination, that the sky was full of angels, and I hollered to my mother. And she came out and stopped short, said, "I see them." So we both saw the sky full of angels. My son was upstairs with his father, and he claims that his father saw them also. And his father went to heaven that next morning, early in the morning.
And then you also have a story of being in the arms of Jesus as well.
That was when I had a gallbladder attack, which was in the middle of the night, in the middle of the winter. And the doctor nearby sent me to the hospital in a hurry. And when I got there, I actually thought I went into heaven anyway. And I felt the arms of Jesus around me. And I said, "Is that you, Jesus?" And then the person started to nod yes, and then I was brought to again. So that's all that happened. But I knew that it was Jesus holding me.
And what was that feeling like, Graham?
It took away all fear. I was not afraid. It was just, I must be going to heaven. Then when I came to, I was a little bit ashamed of it, because why would I leave my two children who were not even high school yet? So that had a mixture of feelings. I was glad to be with Jesus, and I recognized him. But I felt guilty for leaving my children.
So those two experiences, Graham, and as a father who lost his daughter, and my father just 6 years ago, it gives me comfort but how has that formed your view of eternity? Does it make you long for that, and live away with less fear, or how has that changed you?
I think the actual process of going is a little fearful to most anyone, but I do feel that I will be with Jesus and a lot of my friends who have gone before me. So I have a mixture of feelings, but I think when the time comes, the Lord will take care of that.
Another thing, Graham, that I really learned from you is that you don't judge people.
I try not to. Yeah.
That you love people where they're at, and seeing the potential in people.
Right.
And I know you have people at your house who struggle with all sorts of things. Drug addiction, multiple divorces, alcoholism, you name it, they've got it. And I've just seen you love them for not what they've done, but for who they are.
But they were not allowed to do it at my house.
So they were, but even today, what makes you do that?
So I think people see how you live and they automatically know. You don't have to preach it to them.
And not just see it, but see it and desire it, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think seeing the way that people live and saying, I want to live like that. I think, and tell me if this is your experience, Graham, is that so many people will see, a believer live in a way and they're just miserable, right? They're just like more dogmatic. I have to do this, I have to do that. Church is something that they have to do, not that they want to be a part of. And I think what you encompass, just by what you're saying, that people wanted to be around you guys because they saw people living for Jesus in a way that was probably different than what they were used to. That it was not about rules, it wasn't about just sitting down and listening to the scripture, but you guys had fun and you really loved people. And when they saw that, that's what they wanted as well. Would you say that was true?
I would say so, and I would say that some of the children we had stayed with us, lived with us, and went to school for a while because they had very unhappy homes. We tried to have very few rules, but the rules we had, you didn't drink, you didn't smoke, and you didn't swear at our house. And it just sort of automatically incorporated.
Yeah. What would you say, and we can close with this, what would you say, as you guys led churches, was the most important thing for a church? To be a healthy church, the most important thing. I know that's a big question. I did not prep her for any of these questions.
To be a healthy church, you need to love the Lord and you need to love people.
And what does that look like, Graham?
Loving people is very important. You don't say, I don't want this person because he drinks. Or this person went to a dance Saturday night, I don't want him. You love them and say, oh, did you have fun? And you don't have drinking if you know it, but you love the people. The important thing is to love your people, no matter who they are.
I love that, Graham. Church, this is what my hope is for us, is that we'll love the Lord as our number one. I mean, this is what God commands us to do, right? Love the Lord your God
Right.
And then the second commandment is love your neighbor.
Right.
And I mean, you just nailed it on the head that
Love is the most important thing.
exactly.
Loving God and loving your people.
I do want to just say that I do want to have the impact that you and Grandpa had. And if we could have a fraction of that, and I remember Grandpa's funeral, looking out and just seeing a stream of cars, and there was an overflow, a viewing of the funeral. This was in the 80s where that was kind of non-typical, and there's so many people that came and impacted not just by his life but your life together. And I just want to say that my hope is Fireside can be a church that has that impact that you guys had.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but you were always very into bringing your friends there and going fishing, and you know what the home was like. It was automatic. It wasn't something put on.
Right. So I believe that as a church, we want to create environments where relationships can happen.
Right.
And some of the best environments is like hanging out at the lake or fishing, or Grandpa used to get coffee every morning with the guys in town. And
At the country store.
And those are some of the best, most impactful conversations, probably more impactful than a Bible study, would you say?
Right.
And
the Veterans Hall, he used to go to the Veterans Hall, and there were many veterans there at his funeral, too.
yeah. And so we want to do that. We want to create these environments where, I remember when I was in college, they said, the best thing you can do as a parent is have the house that you want kids to be at. So if you have a pool, if you have pizzas, you want kids to come to you. And you guys had a lake. And so people came to you and you got to influence them, and they didn't even know it.
And we fed them.
And you fed them.
You've got to love children.
Yeah.
Don't let them annoy you. You've got to love the children. Yeah. And always so keep your Christian values.
Yeah.
Don't give in.
Don't give in to the world.
Don't give in to the world. Many people, we had many different people live with us at different times that had really bad home lives.
So here, sorry about that. Drew was kind of going crazy a little bit. And generations. We have a lot of generations here. Do you think this guy's going to be a pastor, Graham?
Pardon?
Do you think this little guy will be a pastor?
He could be. Yes. Yes. Both of my grandsons, I have two grandsons, they're both pastors. You and Michael.
And Graham, in the world's knowing, which one's your favorite?
You both are.
Graham, I just want to say we love you, and again, I just hope that we can have the impact that you and Grandpa had. And when you say young people, I'm assuming you're not just talking about kids or students, but as a 96-year-old, everyone's young.
That's right.
And your legacy is just impact, and it continues to do so by this morning in the life-giving advice and stories that you've given us. And so, church, we want to be a church that
loves
God and loves people and doesn't judge them on age, gender, race, background, broken homes, whatever they grew up in. We won't judge.
And when they do something wrong, don't disown them. Talk to them and try to bring them back.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening and watching. We love you, and have a great, great day. Love you, Graham.
I love you.
how can I respond to the love that you have lavished on me? How can I respond to the love that you have lavished on me? How can I respond to the love that you have lavished on me? How can I respond to the love that you have lavished on me? I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. I have a heart that beats for you. I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. I have a heart that beats for you. Every part of me wants to love you like you love me, Lord. Every part of me wants to love you like you love me, my Lord. I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. I have a heart that beats for you. I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. 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 I have a life I'll give to 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 you. I have a heart that beats for 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 you. I have a life I'll give to 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 you. I have a heart that beats for 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 you. I have a life I'll give to 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 you. I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. I have a heart that beats for you. I don't have much, I don't have much, but I have a heart that beats for you. I have a heart that beats for you.